were they doing?
We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
Trying to start a blog. I have a lot of stuff. So I've been building my website. So I've just been really stressed, and he doesn't really believe that I could do any of it. So that's kind of been like a, I don't know, he's like a downer. I don't know, we've just been fighting all morning, and he wouldn't let me in the car before. And then
Why wouldn't he let you in the car? Because of your OCD?
He told me I needed to calm down. Yeah. But I'm perfectly calm. I'm calm all the time, and he really stresses me out, and this is a rough morning.
So, tell me what's going on.
She just gets worked up sometimes, and I try and really distance myself from her, so like I lock the car and I walk away from her. What happened this morning is that she's trying to start up like her own little website blog and everything, so I give her time, and we really had a nice morning, if anything, but she just got worked up because we were trying to get going and get our day going because we want to go like barges before the sun goes down.
Okay. You want to tell me about those scratches on your face?
She had a cell phone in her hand, that's why I was pushing her away, because she wanted me, I locked the keys so I could walk away. I said, let's just take a breather and let's not, go anywhere. Let's just calm down for a minute because she was getting a little worked up. And then she had her phone and was trying to get the keys from me, so I got in the way. I was just trying to, I know I shouldn't push her, but I was just trying to push her away to go, let's just take a minute, step back and breathe. And she got me with her phone.
Can I see your hand?
Hey guys, it's Vanessa from Unmasked. This news came out at the end of last week, but I thought it was really interesting and realized that not everyone may know about the two big things that have come out in the past month or so. We learned more about some of the events and the timeline on the day that they believe Gabby was murdered. Before we get started, please share this video, hit the like, subscribe, all the things, and hit the bell so you'll be notified of my upcoming videos. And really quick before we start, these are actually my personal pictures of the Myakkahatchee Reserve. I went there this summer, drove around Northport, and went to the reserve and walked to all of the relevant places. I definitely don't want to offend anyone who just loves it here, but my personal opinion, I was not a fan. It had such a creepy feeling to it, and obviously that could be for a couple reasons. It could be because, I know what happened there. It could also be because I was literally the only human in the entire reserve, which I thought was really strange. I envisioned people, kind of hiking through it, biking through it. I was the only person in there. You could hear a pin drop. So that helped give it a really eerie feeling. Could have also been that people are just way smarter than me because I went in July, mid-July, around noon. It was hotter than Hades. So that didn't help the situation either. So maybe everyone just understands why the hell would you go there, in the peak of the summer midday. I did want to give you an idea of what it's like, although it's really hard in pictures to kind of get the actual feel of what this place is like. It's completely different and it's very thick and there's just very, very dark brackish water, and it's the kind of place that if it did have high water like they described, it would be, in my opinion, extremely difficult to find anyone or anything in there. If you just love the Myakkahatchee Environmental Creek Park, leave me a comment below and let me know why you like it and why it's not creepy to you. Okay, so let's get into the two pieces of news I wanted to touch on. So there was a press conference at the end of last week that had some very disturbing allegations towards the officers that responded to Gabby and Brian's domestic dispute on August 12th, 2021 in Moab, just weeks before her murder. The clips in this video are courtesy of WFLA. I've linked the WFLA video in the description below so you can watch the press conference in its entirety if you haven't already. Plus, who doesn't love JB? During the press conference, the attorney for the Petito family announced that the Petitos filed a lawsuit against the Moab PD. The attorney, becoming very emotional at times during the statement, discussed all of the work that the Gabby Petito Foundation has done to help the victims of domestic violence. He then revealed that new witnesses have come forward with allegations against the main responding officer, Officer Pratt.
The witnesses and evidence that have come forward have demonstrated that Officer Pratt himself has been a domestic abuser who has misused authority and threats of violence to control and intimidate sexual partners, making clear why Officer Pratt was fundamentally biased in his approach to the investigation.
The Petito's attorneys referred to Gabby's death as preventable and foreseeable.
This morning at 8 o'clock, a lawsuit was filed, the primary cause of which is a wrongful death action, alleging that if the Moab police had followed the requirements of the Utah law, the Utah statutes on domestic violence, Gabby would still be alive today.
It does bring up a very important point of discussion. What negligence do police have when they don't follow or enforce the laws that are in place to protect citizens, and then ultimately that citizen is later murdered? I do think that that's a very layered, complicated conversation that would likely need to be kind of examined on a case-by-case basis, depending on the circumstances. It's going to be really interesting to see how this goes. If you'll recall, during the police interaction with Gabby and Brian, they found Gabby was the aggressor. Brian was jumping around with his fake smile, gaslighting on full display, and it did work. I have stated since the very beginning, if you go back and watch my other Gabby videos, I always had an issue with him over-identifying and relating with Brian too much. I didn't like that part when he compared the situation to his own. I found it highly inappropriate and a clear sign of bias. I do agree with them on that. Just my humble opinion.
Our little squabble started because we were hanging out at the coffee shop, and when I got back to the van, there was some dirt and stuff in the van, and I moved our food around, so it was a little disorganized, so she gets a little...
Will you take those? Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Do you need any water?
It's okay.
It's hot out
I
here.
we were going to get water because we ran out, but it's okay. No, it's okay. I don't like plastic bottles. Okay. Thank you, though. But we just had, it was that we were at the coffee shop for so long because we were there from 9 to 3. So yeah, there's a few little things, little relationships. I don't know if you have a relationship, but I'm sure you have.
I've been married for over 5 years now. So.
There's a lot of little things.
Yeah, I can go.
And
I get it.
We really, we weren't physical before the point where I said, all right, let's just take a breather and like walk away for a minute. I'll lock the van up and I'll go for a walk this way, and you can go walk. You know, there's that what is it called, Moonflower? Right. Yeah. You know, nice areas. You can go either way. It's all shaded. So let's go for a little walk and breathe and come back. Because we're never happy with everything. But she's, I'm not upset with her. She got worked up and she had a phone in her hand and the keys and everything. And she wanted, not her keys, her rings, the phone. And I was holding on to the keys because I didn't want to go anywhere. And my big fear is, I don't have my phone. I don't have a phone. So she goes off without me. With a car, I'm on my own. So I was saying, let's just go for a walk, and she was trying to get the keys for me. So I was just going, just wait, back up, and that's when she hit me. And I didn't get. I don't want to push you, but I didn't get overtly physical. I was just trying to keep her away and not get hit. And then I got really loud, and like that's probably drew everyone's attention where I was going, back up, get away, just give me a.
Okay, so you said you pushed her to create some distance, obviously, right? What happened after that? What got the scratches on your eye?
The phone.
The phone? So you pushed her and she hit you?
She was, it wasn't like a push and she jumped on me. She was already, I don't want to, she was already swinging and I was pressing. A lot of angles, a lot of nails, a lot of rings.
Yeah, you got 3 scratches on your neck. You got one on the left side of your nose. You got one in your face here, and you got 4 bleeding over there. So you just try to meditate stuff, but you tend to have a lot of anxiety and stress.
A lot of anxiety.
And what's his name? Is it Brian? Is he usually pretty patient with you? My anxiety and bringing it down. But my ex-wife, I'm just sharing, I know it's a little personal, but to help you understand, we would feed off each other's anxiety if it spiraled. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter how much I loved her. It may be bad for your soul. Just saying. I'm not telling you what to do with your life, but if you know you have anxiety, look at the situations you can get in You know what I mean?
Oh, I really, really appreciate it.
And I know how rough this stuff can be. Like I said, I've been married for 5.5 years. You know, believe me, if I were to say that me and my wife haven't had our share of spouts, I'd be lying to you. She lives with anxiety. I live with a woman
No,
who
both of
has
us are
anxiety.
really.
I know. Her anxiety elevates my
Yours.
anxiety. And sometimes it
That's
just...
why I'm like, I
sometimes
gotta walk away, I gotta breathe, and looking at backfires even then, you know. But
I'm not going to try to sit here and give you life
No,
advice.
yeah.
You've been on this earth for almost as long as what I have. There's nothing I can tell you that's going to really make a difference. But
So I want to be fair about this. Gabby was clearly extremely upset. Because she was so upset, in my opinion, she didn't really effectively communicate what had happened to the officers. And again, I think there's multiple reasons for that. She almost made it easy for them to blame her. That part is really, really sad because my guess is that she is commonly told that his outbursts are always her fault. Not for nothing, but Gabby owns that van. Gabby, Brian, and both witnesses all corroborated that Brian had locked Gabby out of her van and taken her phone. He also put her stuff outside of the van. So no one looks any further into this, which I find strange. They seem to be solely focused on her saying that she has anxiety, like that's the immediate blanket cause for what just happened. I mean, I don't suppose she could have had anxiety because he had just thrown her stuff out of her own van, taken her phone, so she didn't have any way to make calls or talk to her family and get help in the desert heat. I realize that they're coming into a situation from the outside and trying to figure out what happened, but they just don't seem to look any deeper into things once Gabby mentions her anxiety. So that said, Gabby's parents are suing the Moab PD for $50 million.
Again, I would reiterate that we'd have her back in a heartbeat because she's what's important. But we feel we need to bring justice because she could have been protected that day. There are laws put in place to protect victims, and those laws were not followed. And we don't want this to happen to anybody else.
I know this is hindsight, but did she ever give any of you any indication that there was trouble on the horizon?
I've said it before. We didn't know that Brian was who he was. We just didn't know. There was no indication of that.
Of course, there's still the pending lawsuit against Brian's parents, Chris and Roberta Laundrie. That's going to be really interesting as well because we will get a lot more information from the discovery. This comes just a couple weeks after a new video was released of Gabby and Brian at a Whole Foods in Jackson, Wyoming on August 27th. This was after their explosive fight at the Mary Piglets and likely just immediately before her death. In that video, Brian is seen acting like the giant psychotic man baby that he was, slamming the van door as Gabby solemnly walks next to him. Their interaction in the store is very minimal and visibly tense. So just for a quick refresher, we know from the discovery that was released for the upcoming lawsuit that it's believed that Gabby was murdered on August 27th. I'm going to remind you of the timeline that day. If you want to fully refresh your memory, I have a very detailed timeline in my Gabby Petito playlist linked in the description below. So on August 27th, we knew that they had this miserable lunch at the Mary Piglets where witnesses saw Brian and Gabby get into an explosive fight. Brian was so heated that he exited and then re-entered the restaurant like 4 times, I believe it was. It was reported that he was yelling at the hostess, and it was also said that Gabby was crying and apologizing for his behavior when she left. We didn't really know much about their day after their fight at lunch until Red, White, and Bethune came forward with their video of Gabby's van parked at Spread Creek around 6 p.m. At that time, it looks like the back van door closes. It's just such a creepy video. So there was a gap from 1:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. where we had basically no information on what they were doing. Now there's a video that adds more pieces to the puzzle. Fox News came out with an article with new video of Brian and Gabby after their lunch at the Mary Piglets. So after leaving the restaurant, Brian and Gabby drive to the Whole Foods off of US 89. It's only like a 7-minute drive. The surveillance cameras show that they pull into a parking spot at 2:11 p.m. After 1 minute, Brian gets out of the car, slams the door, and walks to the back of the van. He opens the back door to grab something. You then see Gabby coming around from the passenger side, and she does not look happy. Both of them look completely miserable, actually. Even their body language gives some clues, just my opinion. Gabby has her arms wrapped around herself, which is an indicator she's trying to comfort herself. Brian looks pissed and has his hands like jammed in his pockets. There's zero interaction between them from the car to the store. And her face definitely looks to me as though she's been crying. There's a few clips from inside the store, and nothing that I saw indicated that they were really getting along. They had minimal communication, basically just bare bones to complete their shopping. But other than that, there was no affection between the two. And at some points, they went to opposite parts of the store. They come out of Whole Foods at 2:30 p.m. And here's where it gets interesting and the timeline closes in a bit. You can see by the cameras that they sit in the parking lot from 2:30 to 2:53. And it's too far to see very much, but I would assume that they're arguing or having some type of, emotional conversation. You then see them exit the parking lot to go back to Spread Creek at 2:55 p.m. So now we're basically at 3 p.m. If you look at Google Maps, it's about a 43 to 45 minute drive back to the campground. That's assuming they didn't have to stop for gas or anything like that. So that puts them back around 3:45 or 4 p.m. So this, just my opinion, but I would think we now have a pretty close window between 4 p.m. and 5:45 p.m. in which she was most likely murdered. I say 5:45 because it was around 6 when Red, White, and Bethune drove by, and it looks like Brian closes the door to conceal something that's going on in the van, and I think it's pretty widely agreed upon that something had already happened by the time they drove by. It was still daylight at that time, and if you watch the entire Red, White, and Bethune video, you'll notice that there's some people camping not very far down the road from Gabby's van. I think Brian kept her in the back of the van, possibly gravely injured, until it was dark, and then drug her down across the creek to where she was located on September 19th. It's possible he waited until they got down there to actually kill her. I feel like that part of his letter may have some truth to it. So did the fight escalate while they were driving like it did in Moab on August 12th? He mentions a concussion in his letter. Maybe he caused her to strike her head and he panicked and refused to take her to the hospital. And then when he got back to the camping ground, he just held her in the back of the van until it was dark. That scenario would actually fit pretty well with his letter. I do break the letter down in one of my other videos linked in the description. Every time I watch the Moab PD video or this Whole Foods video, I want to reach to the screen and just hug Gabby. It's very obvious that she was completely miserable and she's stuck in this van with Brian for months. It's still so heartbreaking to see how broken Gabby's parents are. It gets me every time. We continue to send our love and support to them. So I have to ask you guys, what do you think about the latest turn of events? Do you think there was negligence on the Moab PD, or are the Petito families just angry over their tragic loss and wanting someone to be punished since Brian is dead? Please let me know how you feel in the comments below. We'll keep you updated on any new developments in these lawsuits or any details on Gabby's murder. Thank you for watching. Stay safe and see you next time.